Michael Uini coming into this visit, the Michigan visit, it was kind of like this situation where we're just mentioning him, then a guy that maybe they have a fringe chance, and maybe they could do something, and then as soon as that visit was wrapped up in the weekend, it was like, man, Michigan has a legit shot here. Like, he's like talking like Michigan is going to be the choice, and I want to make certain that he wasn't like, I don't think I would consider him a silent commit or anything like that. Like, he wasn't like saying I am, didn't tell the staff that he was necessarily coming, but he was making some heavy hints that, this is probably the team to beat. And I believe they were the team to beat heading into that Georgia visit. And I think Michigan probably still was heading out of that visit, but Georgia kind of gained ground a lot. And I think one of the main points that Georgia really drove home with Uini is the amount of players that Michigan had committed already in the class. Like, they had 5 guys committed, and I'm not sure how many Georgia has, but they don't have 5 guys committed right now. So, that I think that resonated a little bit. And, it was one of those situations leading up to the announcement. It's Michigan pulls ahead, Georgia pulls ahead, Michigan pulls ahead, Georgia pulls ahead, things even out. So there was multiple moves there at some point, and ultimately probably like around 10 o'clock, like 2 days before he was set to announce, that's when he kind of told the coaches that Michigan was out of it and that he was headed to Georgia. And then word kind of leaked out that Georgia was going to be the choice. So I think, it was a lot closer than, what it was heading into that Georgia visit. And I really think the way Georgia sold his role, and not, saying, hey, these guys have 5, potentially 6 guys who could be committed, to this class. We don't have that. You have an easier chance to see the field, even though technically he's the higher rated recruit out of all of those guys that Michigan has. But that doesn't matter either way. That's still, 5 guys in a group. So I think, ultimately that won out in the end. And, it's this recruitment's kind of a difficult, it's difficult to explain because, it's like, he would be the highest rated offensive line commit Michigan would have in the class. But at the same time, there's 5 guys committed that are all pretty good in their own right too. So, I don't necessarily want to just go the route saying, Michigan will be fine. I mean, it's a recruiting loss, but at the same time, Michigan really likes what they have with those 5 guys. And I really think even more, Bennett Warren, the guy we're going to be talking about coming up, I think that's kind of like a cherry on top of what they have, just putting a bow on the room, really. So I guess it kind of depends on your viewpoint. Yeah, Michigan lost a guy to Georgia, the back-to-back national champions. It's good to be involved in those kind of recruitments, and you got to win some eventually if you want to play with the big boys. But at the same time, too, I don't think this kills the program. I don't think this kills offensive line recruitment. I think they're very happy with what they have, and they'll go from there. Maybe someone pops up again, but I'm not going to sit here and say be all doom and gloom and say this is the worst thing to ever happen to Michigan's offensive line room. It would be nice to have them, but you're also good with what you have.
Over at the Den on our message board community at michigan.rivals.com, I brought up the context of, again, I'm not trying to hedge a loss. I think it is a recruiting loss, but this isn't what happened a few years ago when Michigan was going after the wall. I remember they had a graphic on this, and it was Isaiah Wilson and Jedrick Wills. Yeah. Right. So Ruiz was a part of that. So was, why am I drawing a blank? Went to Minnesota. Chuck Filiega.
Yep.
But there were like 2 or 3 other dudes that were supposed to be a part of that group that they lost on. And that was their pitch, was those 5. And then they lost on those dudes. There wasn't those were their dudes. Those were clear plan A, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where with Michael, again, he kind of felt like a luxury player. With him taking his OV, I was like, this guy's considering Bama and Georgia and Clemson. And Michigan has just been killing it on these official visits. And again, I think almost every official visit goes really well.
Yeah.
It's bad when an official visit doesn't go well, right? But they're just killing it on these OVs. And you start like seeing them trending heavily towards Michigan. And then when the dust settles and it goes time to commit, they pick maybe one of the programs we thought they were going to originally, the safety JJR who picked Texas recently. That was kind of the thing for a while, but he comes into Michigan. It's like, oh, right. So I think Michigan's really close with some of these where they're trying to pick off guys, but it's clear they're being negatively recruited there for having the 5 guys they wanted already, which is not a bad thing. They're 16 deep on the offensive line right now. Now they know a lot of those guys are going to be moving on after this year, but it's really easy if you're trying to negatively recruit them to kind of point that out. And I have heard the transfers that came in, right? Some talk about that, using that as a negative recruiting tool. That's only going to work if you're not buying into Michigan's culture, which has consistently been competition, right? I bring up, not only did dudes come back instead of going to the NFL, not only did Michigan add these transfers, no one left on the offensive line, right? We knew we were going to be in competition. Bring it on, right? That's the attitude of the players that are here and the players that are coming in. So if that's not what you want, and I'm not saying Michael was running from competition. Like you said, he's arguably the best. He would have been the best offensive line commit ranking wise. But the guys that are here, okay. Right. There's nobody being scared in or out. I love Andrew Sprague at left tackle, Ben Roebuck probably at right tackle with Frazier and Hamilton moving inside. But, if you add Michael Uini, you're creating a head-to-head battle with one of those two, most likely, right? Yep. And you still might, like you said, the guy we brought up, somebody who, again, was initially heavily favored to Texas A&M, takes his visit and has kind of been lingering there. You and I both still have future casts in on him. That's Bennett Warren. Mm-hmm. I think initially it felt like Uini took his OV to Michigan, Georgia, moved up his Bama visit. All of a sudden he's committing. Felt like maybe he was trying to grab a spot at Michigan. That was part of the thought around him as well. So now Bennett Warren's still sitting there. Does Uini change anything? Was he maybe in or out depending on that? Do we still think Bennett Warren's coming? And I'm with you. If he doesn't, is that kind of the last swing and we're good with the 5 we have? Is that going to be the attitude around Ann Arbor? Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out, where things are in terms of Bennett Warren.
Michigan he was very open about Michigan being his leader after his official visit. And then the Uini stuff popped up, which kind of led to the question is, do they take both Uini and Warren? And now it's obviously down to whether Warren wants to come in or not. And I think his Tennessee official visit has given him something to think about for sure. So I don't know. I'm not as confident that Michigan is going to be the spot for him now. And I'm not ready to completely move off my Michigan projection yet because it was there for a reason. But we'll kind of figure things out when there's a true announcement day for him. And I think he's pretty much done with his officials. So an announcement shouldn't be too far away. So, which kind of leads to the next point, what happens next? If Michigan gets Warren, great, perfect. They're done with 6. They've got a really strong class of really good 4-star talent. And if they don't get him, they're fine with 5. And they'll go into the season, the season visit schedule with 5. Do they add another? Do they add a 6th? Maybe. I don't know. I think Sharon Moore and his staff have kind of earned the right to look around and take flyers on some guys. If that's the case, if some recruit has a big senior season that comes out of nowhere that Michigan identifies as a potential guy, that could be a possibility. Again, this is just, it's all basically speculation, but at the same time, Michigan likes what they have. And I think if they were to go 5 the rest of the way until December and February, I think they'd be perfectly fine with that. So if they were willing to go 6, I think, you could realistically think of a scenario where they could add a 6th guy, or just delay this at the 6th and just add it through the portal. So that's portal
a really good point.
Yeah, the portal recruitment has also now become a factor where you can say, all right, if Michigan, let's say hypothetically, Michigan just misses on every single cornerback target that they are recruiting from here until December. So that means that they miss on Aaron Scott, and then maybe they identify another guy and they miss on him too. They're kind of at the point now where they can just say, okay, well, if we didn't get anyone, in this recruiting class, we can go right to the portal and say, hey, identify this guy, bring him in, and you've got your corner. It might not necessarily be a 4-year guy. It could be a 2-year guy. It could be a guy like a Ernest Houseman situation where he plays for 1 year and bring him right in. You've filled your hole. So, that's kind of, which brings me to a totally unrelated point, like the freak out about, where the direction of losing a guy like Uini to Georgia and, the overall temperature of defensive back recruiting. It's like Michigan has so many other ways now that they've proven to be effective in terms of bringing talent in. The transfer portal kind of changes it all. So, you get misses, you can bring some guys in from the portal and be totally fine. A guy's going to come in. The worst case scenario is you bring a guy in with college experience that has to learn a system, whereas a guy where you have to bring in out of high school, get his body right, get his nutrition right, get him acclimated to college classes, and on top of him learning a defensive scheme, I'd rather take a talented portal guy. So, I think, there's so many different avenues that Michigan can take here. And I think they have that kind of luxury that they can do that now because they've just recruited so well this cycle.
Yeah, in terms of filling gaps, I'm with you. Like getting somebody like Houseman, who was Nebraska's top freshman, right? Like they're Jimmy Rolder plus equivalent. They're, Mason Graham at linebacker, however you want to frame it. Right. Like they were really excited about him out in Lincoln. So bringing him in, that's a huge deal. And I wouldn't be shocked. A lot of the names we've been talking about this spring and summer, a year or two from now, if they enter the portal and we're like, hey guys, remember that recruitment? Maybe Michigan's got an in here. Right. So yeah, I'm with you. And again, if Michigan wasn't back-to-back Big Ten champions with a top 3 or 4 team heading into the 2023 season and a class of 23 or 24 kids already top 5. Like things are going so well that you can't, look at the macro, each individual recruitment, and make a big statement about it. But yeah. And yeah, you put this comment up. I hope we don't depend too heavily on the transfer portal like we do with basketball. It's not depending on it. It's just using it to your advantage.
Yeah, I agree. That's what I was going to say.
Like they didn't need Houseman. Houseman coming in arguably meant Hill Green and Moten left.
Yeah.
Right. And offensive line, they were able to upgrade and add competition and depth. AJ Barner, what a perfect fit, right? Yeah. But again, they've got guys on the roster. They would have been fine. But if that dude, and we said the same thing with cornerback, everybody's been freaking out about CB2 already, like you said. And they talked to a couple guys. If the perfect fit came up, somebody that could come in with experience, maybe some leadership, that he could join the room, but not cause any of the young guys that you like to leave,
right?
Then that's something you would pursue. And there it was with Josh Wallace, right? Guy that played in Don Brown's system, which is man defense on the outside, obviously. Former captain, played for 4 years, right? So you use the portal to your advantage. You don't rely on it. You felt good with the dudes you had at CB2, but hey, you are a perfect little fit. We're going to plug you right in there. That's how I think they're using the portal and will continue to.